The Nagorno-Karabakh events, which resurfaced in 1988, were the culmination of centuries of conflicting interests, religious, geopolitical, and economic. The roots of the problem are related to Armenia's territorial claims, as has also been brought out, against Azerbaijan over the centuries. The historical plan was to separate Nagorno Karabakh unilaterally and annex it to Armenia. At the end of 1991 and at the beginning of 1992, the implementation of the plan started, the ultimate objective being the Armenian desire of building a state from sea to sea. If you look at the map of the region, the strategic objective would be quite clear. The Armenian government wanted to annex Nagorno Karabakh despite international legal norms, demonstrating their readiness to resort to any kind of crimes and barbarism in pursuance of their ideology. Excuse me. The Khojaly Genocide is the gravest crime committed against peaceful Azerbaijanis in the course of Armenia's aggressive war against Azerbaijan. Prior to this, as part of a planned occupation, the peaceful population of the Baghanis Ayram village in Azerbaijan's Gazakh region, bordering with Armenia and the Azerbaijani populated villages of Imarat, Garvan, Tok, Salaktin, Akhulu, Hassanabad, and many other villages, were murdered with particular cruelty. It should also be noted that before the Khojaly genocide on 17th of February 1992, 80 Azerbaijanis were massacred in the Garadaghi village in Khojavan. The Armenian purpose and objective in Khojaly was the liquidation of the strategic hindrance in the form of Azerbaijani residents in the mountainous parts of Nagorno-Karabakh. Another objective was the razing of Khojaly to the ground because Khojaly reflected the history and traditions of Azerbaijan since ancient times. The distinct culture is classified as Khojaly Gadave in Azerbaijani history. The destruction of all these material and cultural monuments and Khojaly graveyard, one of the most ancient cemeteries in history, are obvious examples of barbarism and aggression against world culture and, I would say, against Islam. By occupying Khojaly, Armenia was aiming to invade the other districts of Nagorno-Karabakh region, take the strategic heights, and get favorable opportunities. Besides, the only airport in the Nagorno-Karabakh region was situated here in Khojaly. So, on a bitterly cold night on February 26, 1992, the Armenian troops and tanks rolled into the small town of Khojaly. What follows was one of the vilest programs on European soil since World War II. The massacre of 613 Azerbaijani civilians by Armenian soldiers. Among those brutally murdered were 106 women, 63 children, and 70 older adults. Nearly 487 were seriously wounded when the town, with a population of about 7,000, was targeted with heavy artillery backed by tanks. Subsequent investigations by the Azerbaijani government and international agencies, based on the testimonies of about 2,000 survivors, exposed the brutalities of the Armenian soldiers. Many had their scalps peeled. Now imagine scalping in this day and age. We used to hear about the Red Indians carrying out scalping in America, but these people had their scalps removed. This is a classic sign of hatred. Some had their ears, noses, or sexual organs cut off, and many had their eyes gouged out. All these acts go to show the intense hatred which had been gradually fed to the Armenians over a period of time as a policy spanning generations. After the Armenian attack began, almost 2,500 residents tried to leave the city and reach the nearest Armenian controlled area, the Azerbaijani controlled area, but were not successful. People who were fleeing the city were ambushed by Armenian military posts. They were shot, slaughtered, and captured. According to eyewitnesses, at one of the locations, the whole area was littered with dead bodies. The bodies, in some cases, had been mutilated, and like I said earlier, the scalps removed. Children's ears were cut off, and it was obvious that in some cases, the wounded had also been killed in cold blood. Armenia's corridor claim is another interesting point. The Armenians claimed that they established a humanitarian corridor for the residents to leave the city. Witness statements, international reports, and even Armenian official confessions show the weakness of the corridor claim. If there was a corridor, as claimed by the Armenians, then why were Azerbaijanis trapped and slaughtered when the Khojaly citizens were trying to reach the town of Aghdam in Azerbaijani territory? As a result of systematic efforts to increase the international community's awareness of the Khojaly genocide, the Parliamentary Union of the OIC, as well as parliaments of Pakistan, Mexico, Czech Republic, Peru, Panama, Honduras, Indonesia, Sudan, Guatemala, Paraguay, and Djibouti, recognized the mass killings of Khojaly as a genocidal crime. The parliaments of Bosnia-Herzegovina, who have themselves been victims of genocide in Srebrenica and other places, strongly condemned and recognized the Khojaly events as a massacre. The events in Bosnia and Herzegovina have been referred to earlier also by Dr. Yamin, and I was ambassador in Bosnia-Herzegovina from 2011 to 2014. And what happened in Srebrenica, it was amazing in this day and age. Bodies were cut and they were thrown all over buried actually, in football fields in the surrounding area so that they would not be recognized. 8,800 men and boys, males. The women were raped. Of course, ladies sitting here, we will not discuss that. So this is something which I referred to earlier also, that and now in Gaza, the same thing is being repeated. As a result of the Azerbaijan Armed Forces counteroffensive in September 2020, territories that were under Armenian control for over 30 years were liberated. The final victory for Azerbaijan came in 2023, when the so-called Artsakh region was finally dissolved on 1st January 2024 and the conflict came to an end. A lot has been said by my colleague about the Gaza tragedy. The tragedy is, in my opinion, that this is being supported by various reasons by most of the Western powers. The UN has been made toothless, and Israel continues on a rampage while the Muslim world watches on helplessly. How can we expect others to support this when we are not helping our own people? Tribute must be paid to the courage, dedication, and perseverance of the Azerbaijani people and the leadership for finally achieving their well-deserved victory in spite of insurmountable odds. There is much to learn for us in Pakistan from the example of Azerbaijani leadership and their people. The truth prevailed, as it must eventually, but only after great sacrifices were made by the Azerbaijani people. Pakistan stood firmly with the Azerbaijanis brothers in the war, and Azerbaijan similarly stands with us in our efforts in resolving the Kashmir dispute. Thank you very much.